someone could advance the screen for me because I can't advance it. Sorry, is that the next screen? So I'm going to talk about myself and my firm real quickly. I'm a member of McDonald Hopkins. I've been practicing contracting law and certification law for the past 30 years, as well as construction and other related disputes. I shows my licenses here, and I'm the head of our federal contracting group of McDonald Hopkins. And then Karen Goldner is going to also be speaking. She's going to talk about herself in a few minutes, and I want to go jumping to me back to the housekeeping areas. Is that if you have any questions during the presentation, please email them right away so Michelle and Karen can answer during the webinar. Please email at the events@mcdonaldhopkins.com. That's events@mcdonaldhopkins.com. If it's after the presentation, my email and Karen's email will be on the last slides, but you can always email me questions, or if you don't want to if you don't want to send them to our events, you could just send them to me directly at my email. So I didn't get a chance to introduce Karen because the slides advanced so crazily for me. Karen, can you, I think you're on the line and you're not unmuted. Can you talk a little bit about yourself and the WBDC, and then we'll get on with the show?
Oh, sure. Thanks so much, Michelle. It's exciting to be with you all this afternoon. The Women's Business Development Center is a nonprofit organization based in Chicago and serving 9 states. We provide a variety of services for both women and male-owned businesses, but specifically with respect to women-owned businesses, we are the largest regional partner organization for WBENC, the Women's Business Enterprise National Council, serving women-owned businesses and corporate partners in 9 Midwestern states. And in that context, we also certify the WOSB, Women-Owned Small Businesses, and we'll be talking obviously extensively about that later. Myself, I have worked in and for and with small businesses for about 20-some years, and I've been with the WBDC for 5 years, running our certification program for about 3 years.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to get on with this right away, and I want to talk to you about an overview of the program. So the Women-Owned Small Business Program is a federal contracting program which authorizes contracting officers to set aside federal contracts for eligible women-owned small businesses and economically disadvantaged women-owned small businesses. It allows contracting officers to set aside contracts in eligible NAICS codes that are set by the SBA. And just so you're all clear about this, if you're an EDWOSB, or economically disadvantaged women-owned small business, it's actually a subset of women-owned small business. So if you qualify as an EDWOSB, you automatically qualify as a woman-owned small business. And the SBA implements and exclusively administers the program. And I'm trying to get to the next slide. So what are the benefits of the program? Well, the benefits of the program is when you are involved in federal contracting and you're a WOSB or EDWOSB, the federal government can restrict competition limited to only WOSBs. So that we call that set-asides. So what does that mean in people terms? In people terms, it means that a contracting officer will see a solicitation, will identify a solicitation to be set aside exclusively just for women-owned small businesses. So that means no other small businesses or large businesses could bid on this in the country or the world. It's only women-owned small businesses. If the small business happens to be woman-owned, they could bid on the project. And it also allows for women-owned small business sole source awards. And what I mean by sole source is that there's no competition. You might have a good relationship with a contracting officer because they know you or they've met you on several occasions, and they deem that they need to sole source, which means no competition whatsoever. They simply contact you, you negotiate the contract, negotiate scope, etc., and they can issue, under certain circumstances, a sole source award, which I will get into a little bit later. And then it gives you opportunities to team and joint venture with other federal contractors. And it also gives you the opportunity to participate in the All Small Business Mentor Protege program under the SBA. So why the program at all? Well, the program actually is about goals. So the federal government has contracting goals to maximize the most amount of participation from different kinds of small businesses. Their goal is 23% of prime contracts for small business, 5% of prime contracts for small disadvantaged certified businesses, which are 8A businesses, 5% of prime and subcontracts for women-owned businesses, 3% hub zone, and 3% for service-disabled veteran-owned small business. So a little bit of the history behind the rule. The rule has had several iterations throughout time. It started all in about 2000 when the 5% women-owned contracting goal was put into place. However, it took many, many years before there was rules that were published and established in order to create this actual program. And when it was first created several years ago now, it was created very restrictively. For instance, it was created to only allow set-aside for EDWOSB and WOSB in about 83 NAICS codes, but most NAICS codes were under economically disadvantaged women-owned small business, including the construction NAICS codes, which means that the woman owner had to have a much lower net worth, and it was very difficult for contracting officers to set aside due to that, because in order to be a prime contractor, for instance, in construction, you have to have bonding. In order to get bonding, you have to have a higher net worth. Well, there was a lot of letters, complaints, a lot of town halls about the issue, and the SBA then expanded the NAICS codes and did actually a lot of switching, where they switched the EDWOSB to WOSB NAICS codes, and now there are over 360 NAICS codes for WOSB and about 80 for EDWOSB. When the program first started, the contracting program, there used to be caps on the amount of set-asides. For instance, 2 small women businesses would go after solicitation, but it had to be under a certain amount of money. Now there's no caps. There was no sole source award before, but as of December 2015, contracting officers can now make sole source awards to women-owned businesses. And in the past, self-certification was allowed. We're going to talk a lot about that. And then also the difficult part of getting women-owned small business contracts and getting contracting officers to set them aside is that the contracting officers themselves had to go to the repository to verify the women business documents. Because these women were self-certified, they would upload documents, and their business documents, whether they're financial statements or their corporate bylaws or other documents such as those or articles of incorporation, it kind of made the contracting officer make sure they were there and kind of understand what does this woman business truly meet the eligibility criteria. So it was a lot for them. And we saw that contracting officers were more hesitant to set aside to women-owned small businesses because of that. However, that's all changed by this new rule. As of July 15th, SBA will begin to enforce its new rules to implement the National Defense Authorization Act rule, and the biggest change is that it now eliminates self-certification option. So it says effective October 15th, which we'll talk about a little bit more. So even though women are self-certified, they could still bid on contracts being self-certified until October 15th. After that, they cannot. There's new certification options to go through the SBA or a third-party certifier. Like the WBDC, WeBank, Kieran is third-party certifier. but the SBA was never a certifier. Now it is. SBA set forth their eligibility and certification processes, the timing to reapply if you're denied, a process for contracting officers to set aside contracts, as well as addresses protests from other WOSB firms, protests and others protesting the status or eligibility of a woman-owned small business. So the current self-certification process will remain available for firms until October 15th in certify.sba.gov. On July 15th, however, firms can begin submitting applications under the new certification process. Because remember, I need you to understand, if you're certified, self-certified, and you're bidding on government contracts and you don't try to apply for certification before October 15th, by October 15th, you're not going to be able to bid on contracts, and you're going to be waiting in line much longer to get certified if you're going right directly to the SBA. So that's why the SBA is now allowing firms by July 15th to begin submitting applications for the new certification process. So there'll be enough time for there to be to process them, so people could then start bidding on contracts after October 15th as being certified. The SBA also posts on their website that their further instructions for the new certification process will be provided by July 15th. I suspect they'll provide an application to the extent there is a new application, etc. On October 15th, there also will start beginning issuing decisions on certifications. So you won't get, even if you apply for certification with the SBA tomorrow, you're not going to get a decision until October 15th. Now, as Karen will explain to you when she does her portion of this regarding the WBDC, you will be able to get a decision with the WBDC, at least on the WOSB, but she can give you more detail about that. So what are the eligibility requirements under the regulations? Well, you have to meet the small business size standard for your primary North American classification code and contract. So what happens is that all contracting officers, when they issue a solicitation, they will issue a solicitation in a certain NAICS code, okay? So if, for instance, they issue a solicitation for general construction, they might issue it in a NAICS code 236220, and that size standard is 39.5 million over average over 5 years. So you just need to know whether or not you meet that small business size standards. Okay, and then also you need to know and understand the whole concept of affiliation, because even if your own company meets the size the small business size standards, you might have multiple companies or be affiliated with the other company that would render the SBA adding your gross receipts together with your other companies and not potentially meeting that size standard. So other criteria is that the firm must be unconditionally and directly owned by women who are U.S. citizens. There is an exception on the directly owned by U.S. citizens, and they do allow ownership in trust as long as the trust is revocable and the owner is the grantee and the grantor and the beneficiary. Regarding unconditional, what they mean by that is that there cannot be any restrictions on the ability of the woman's ability to transfer her stock or do what she wants with her stock. So there can't be any buy-sell agreements in place or any agreements where she is restricted from selling, from disposing of her ownership interests. A woman must manage the day-to-day operations, make the long-term decisions for the business, hold the highest officer position, and work at the business full-time during normal working hours. There's no minimum amount of time to be in business. Someone had asked a question before the webinar started, and no, if you open up your business and next month or whenever it is, you could apply for a certification. Now, when I talk to my clients about certification and I talk about ownership and control, I like to divide it up to help them understand the issues there. When they say you have to own the company, we talked about it being unconditional, but the control comes in two areas. One area is the legal control for a company. Does women, or a woman who owns the firm, does she have the legal ability to control the company? Is she the bank signatory on her account? Do the bylaws or other documents, articles of organization, or operating agreement reflect that she is in control, legal control of the company? Moving on, though, on control. The SBA has additional rules regarding control. They say that the management of the daily business concern must be controlled by one or more women. Control means that both the long-term decision-making and the day-to-day management and administration of the business operations must be conducted by one or more women or economically disadvantaged women. Women must have managerial experience to the extent and complexity needed to run the concern. And that's where operational control. I said there's two types of control: legal control, the other is operational control. And what they mean by that really is, does she understand, or does that woman have a knowledge base of the actual business that she's running? So an example is that even though I'm a lawyer, if I started my own little law firm and I wanted to get certified, I probably can, because you get certified in your NAICS codes, right? So I could get certified as a woman-owned legal business. However, if I bought a structural engineering company, or a structural steel company for that matter, and I own it 100%, but I can't necessarily walk up to any one of my employees and know exactly what they're doing or how they're bidding and estimating the job, because I don't have any background in that. And so that's the difference between regular corporate M&A work and certification work, is that you're certified, and this goes to the City of Chicago certifications. If you happen to be in Chicago, it could go to City of Los Angeles certifications, or clearinghouse, or any other type of certifications out there. You're normally certified in the NAICS codes for which you have experience. So what additional SBA regulations are there relating to control? They do talk about male involvement with the firm. And they say that men or other entities may be involved in the management of the concern, and may be stockholders, partners, or limited liability members, but no males or other entity may exercise actual control or have the power to control the concern. They also they talk about male involvement with the firm as it relates to required licenses. And they do say that the woman owner does not need that license, the license required to operate the firm, as long as she still possesses the technical expertise or experience to control the firm. But they say that if the man possesses the required license and has an ownership or equity interest in the firm, he may be found to be the one that controls the firm. So we talked a little bit about affiliation. Just know what your affiliates, the term affiliates, and you should seek guidance from your trusted advisors that understand business and eligibility criteria and small business criteria. There is additional requirements if you want to be economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business certified, okay? And that has to do, so that's the economically disadvantaged part, and they have personal net worth requirements, and that personal net worth, and that means the assets minus liability must be less than $750,000. You can exclude the ownership in your business and primary personal residence, income invested to pay taxes, funds reinvested into IRA. But if you've transferred your assets within 2 years to any family members, that's a no-no under their rules, okay? Your adjusted gross income average has to be under $350,000, and there is exclusions relating to income reinvested into the business to pay taxes. And the fair market business of all your assets must be included now, and that has to be under $6 million. And the funds reinvested into IRAs will be excluded but there are additional rules on that. And unfortunately, we don't have the time for that today, sorry. So what happens when you want to apply for economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business, but your husband is the 49% owner or a partial owner or involved in the firm? Well, the SBA says that they will take the spouse's finances into consideration if the spouse has a role in the EDWOSB. If he has lent money to or provided financial support, incurring credit or guarantee of loan. And they also may look to the spouse's finances if both spouses are in the same or similar line of business, etc. So you got to be careful about that and seek guidance if that's the case. WOSB certification. Prior to 2020, there were 2 ways to certify for the WOSB program: self-certification and third party. But now there's no more self-certification. Will be totally effective October 15th, but the rule is in place, and you will certify through SBA or third-party certifiers. And Karen, I'm so thrilled that you're here and that you could talk about how it works as a third-party certifier with the WBDC.
Thank you so much, Michelle. So I know we have people on the call who are from throughout the country. So let me just a quick introduction to WBENC, the Women's Business Enterprise National Council, which is the national organization that creates the standards under which firms can be WBENC WBE certified throughout the country. You're certified by a regional partner organization based on the location of your headquarters. So if you're in Illinois, Missouri, Wisconsin, Minnesota, any of our 9 states, you come through us. It's the same process, just with a different RPO if you are based in California or someplace that isn't in the Midwest. And there's over 15,000 national WBE certified nationally. And we also certify for the WOSB, and so I'll talk about that. So you can see a map here of where we all are. We're kind of that middle sort of darkish purplish color in the middle, but you can see that there's a regional partner organization everywhere. And so the Women's Business Development Center, as I said at the beginning, we're a nonprofit organization. We're based in Chicago, but we actually have offices in the Twin Cities, in Milwaukee, St. Louis, Kansas City, and also several Chicagoland area offices, including in Aurora and downtown Chicago. And we do a variety of capacity building and technical assistance programs for folks, but you should check out our website, wbdc.org. But let's go ahead and keep moving. So one thing that is very important to keep in mind, obviously, with well, any kind of certification, is the confidentiality. And WBENC several years ago selected the very secure B2G Now platform, which is used by a variety of governments, certifying bodies throughout the country, including City of Chicago and Cook County here in Illinois, and frankly the state of Illinois for that matter. Another thing to keep in mind is that information that you provide to us, such as tax returns, financial statements, those kinds of things, are not shared with corporate partners. It says corporate members, corporate partners. It's the same term. And so here we go. So the application process is through the WBENC link system, and you go into manage or apply for certification. We can go ahead and move ahead. Okay, and then what you're going to do is you're going to determine whether your annual gross receipts were above or below $500 million. And that's not a typo. One thing about WBENC, WBE certification, is that it is designed for the corporate sector. And as many of you know, the corporate sector actually wants you to be as big as you can possibly be. There is no size limitation with respect to the WBENC WBE certification. Obviously, there is size limitations with respect to the WOSB. So as a third-party certifier, if you apply for both WBE and WOSB, what happens is we review the WBE first, and we're looking for those 3 buckets that Michelle talked about: ownership, legal control, and operational control. And we make sure that you meet the WBENC standards for that. And then Assuming that you're approved for that, then we look at the WOSB, because that is slightly more restrictive, as Michelle indicated. The other restriction is that you must be a U.S. citizen to qualify for the WOSB. And for the WE Bank, as long as you have a green card or are a U.S. citizen, then we're fine. So we can go ahead. Okay, this just kind of gives you a sense of what the application process is going to look like. The first 6 sections are just questions and answers, and then the document list is the section toward the bottom, and you're just going to, start applying. If you go to our website, wbdc.org, in the certification section, we have an infographic called How to Apply for Certification. And it will walk you through all these steps, and it gives you a link to the WeBank website where they have a list of the documents that are needed. The other thing I want to just point out on this slide, if you look up kind of toward the top where it says date for deletion, and here it shows June 5th of 2018, part of the security feature for the B2G Now system, again, that WeBank link is based on, is that you have 90 days from when you begin your application to when you submit it. And if you go longer than that, then everything you've done is destroyed. And in fact, it's destroyed so much that I can't even go to B2G Now and say, hey, can you help me with, Acme Manufacturing's application, which was deleted 2 days ago, and they'll say, no, actually, it's truly, truly gone. So you want to just kind of keep track of that. Yes.
Karen, that brings up to one comment and one question. The comment is I find that on the online system, a lot of our clients are not saving what they uploaded, and they're just all over the place on their computer or hard files. So you should make a file of everything you have uploaded just in case it does expire. The other question,
exactly right.
and the other question that I got is that, what if I am already WBE certified with WeBank, but I never bothered to get WOSB certified? Can I still do that with you now?
Well, I don't know. The answer is actually yes, you can, but only upon renewal. So my little smart alecky comment was, because I don't know when the person's renewal is. So this gives you this is actually the first question that you get when you're applying. And you will get this question when you're reapplying also. So you would, if you were applying for WOSB, you would select yes. If you're not, you obviously would select no. We do, and when I say we, I mean the WBDC or any of the other regional partner organizations. We do the WOSB as a free service to our women business owners. And as a result, we're not charging an additional fee for it. We charge a fee for the WBE certification, but none for the WOSB. And as a result, we are only able to do the WOSB when we're already doing your review for the WBE. And I also—
Or upon a renewal?
Yes,
or upon a renewal.
Yeah, right, exactly. We cannot do it outside of renewal. So if you're certified, you have a July 1st date and you're coming back in for your renewal right now, if you select that you want to have WOSB, we'll definitely add that review. If you were just certified WBE 3 weeks ago, then you're going to have to wait until next year. The other point that I want to make about, Michelle, about your comment with respect to having all of these documents in a folder somewhere, is it then also makes it easier if you're applying for City of Chicago or some other certification in another government entity. Then it's just what you have is already easily accessible. So this gives you a list of the mandatory documents, and you'll be able to. We're not going to walk through these obviously, but this gives you a sense of kind of the level of scrutiny that we're going to be looking at. And all of these documents are required, from just a brief history of the business that kind of explains how you got into the business, to your tax returns, to all of your shareholder documents and so forth.
Karen, another question. EDWOSB, what if I want that? Can I apply through you, or do I have to go directly to the SBA?
Yep, you would go directly to the SBA for that. Because we only do the WOSB, yeah. And I think there might be one more of the form slides maybe. Oh, here, yeah, I guess this is it. The other thing, okay, so most people would think that mandatory and required mean the same thing. I think that most of us would agree to that, but not in WeBankLink world. Mandatory means you have to do it. Required means you only have to do it if it exists. So for instance, like the assumed name DBA certificate. Well, if you are not, if your company doesn't use an assumed name, then you would just hit not applicable. So that you know, or if you do have a DBA, then you would attach it and that would be uploaded. So that's what kind of the difference between mandatory and required.
Well, thank you, Karen. And we're going to take questions if you want to send them in to us for Karen during the webinar or afterwards, if you'd like to send it afterwards. Moving on with the other certification, and there are other third-party certifiers out there. We just don't have there's so much to go through. We don't have a lot of time to spend on each third-party certifier, but NWBOC is another third-party certifier. But and on the SBA's website, they will list all other third-party certifiers. But you could also certify with the SBA. And as of July 15th, you can go online, and it's free process to do your certification. Be prepared to have all your documents and information ready to go. SBA is expected to issue additional directions. We said that a few minutes ago, and seek guidance if you're unsure if you meet eligibility. Because, for instance, if your bylaws really reflect that it's other people that control your company, you've now uploaded them to the federal government website, and it's not easy to take those back, right? So I would really seek guidance before you hit send. And make sure that whoever you work with, your accountant, your attorney, understands the eligibility criteria, or they can even help you certify, so you feel confident when you submit it to the SBA that you're going to get approved. Very much like the 8A process.
Michelle, I'm not going to interrupt you much, but I'm going to interrupt you right here just to point something out to folks. There's lots of ways that lawyers draft bylaws and operating agreements, and they're all fine if they meet your needs. But in a certification scenario, those control pieces that Michelle is talking about are super important. And so when you're talking with your attorney, you need to make sure that you have an attorney who truly understands certification, and not one who feels like, well, I can just make an argument and I can argue my way out of it. Because the answer with most certifying bodies, and this is true for us, I imagine it'll be true for the SBA, it's true for the government units that do certification, is you're not going to argue your way out of it. So you just want to make sure that what was great when you set up the company 10 years ago and you didn't care about certification, you want to review those and review those with an eye toward making sure that they do give the woman business owners legal control. Sorry about that, Michelle.
No, it's fine. Thank you so much. So moving on in terms of getting ready for this July 15th, certification process, if you're going to certify through the SBA. We know that so far that you have to register in sam.gov and make sure your registration is updated if you're already registered. You create a profile on certify.sba.gov after July 15th. You choose which application that you want to utilize, the EDWOSB or the WOSB. And please remember that if you're EDWOSB, you're automatically WOSB. Go back to SAM after you've done that, and then update your profile regarding the WOSB and EDWOSB. Those will be some options to click on at that point. So just understand that certification is not perpetual. So to maintain the status under the WOSB program, all WOSBs, and I'll just say WOSBs when I talk about EDWOSBs, whether certified through the SBA or third parties, will be required to attest annually on the certified.gov that they remain eligible for the program and undergo a full program examination every 3 years. So it's a 3-year certification, and that's consistent with WBENCs and other third-party certifiers. And the firms will also need to update their certification information through sam.gov once a year. What if a WOSB's ongoing obligations to the SBA? Well, one is as it relates to material changes. If there's any material change, you must notify the SBA within 30 days of the change. Now, what are material changes? Well, they include, but aren't limited to, a change in ownership, a change in business structure, or a change in management. And those are the three big ones. And a business structure could even be a change going from an S Corp to an LLC, or you're changing the way you now put somebody else in as president and not you anymore. Those changes need to be in writing and uploaded to your profile with the SBA. The failure to notify the SBA within that 30 days of the material change could result in decertification and removal from your ability to contract with the SAM and the DSBS database. In addition, the SBA can seek imposition of penalties. That's the scary part, but I have to let you know about it here. Excuse me. So the SBA has a presumption of loss based upon the total amount expended. So whenever it's established that a business other than a woman-owned business or EDWOSB willfully sought and received an award by misrepresentation, the following actions shall be deemed affirmative, willful, and intentional. Submission of a bid proposal as a WOSB, in any way encouraging a federal agency to classify a bid proposal if awarded as an award to an EDWOSB, and registration on any database. So what they mean by presumption of loss based upon the total amount expended, if your contract is $2 million, the presumption of loss to the federal government is $2 million. Other penalties could be against the person itself, the owner of the firm, or both. Could mean suspension and debarment, civil penalties, and these are the words from the SBA statute, severe penalties under the False Claims Act and the Program Fraud Civil Remedies Act, and severe criminal penalties for knowingly representing the EDWOSB or WOSB. So let's talk about the really exciting stuff, and that's the actual contracting program. The federal government, and I divide this up, does sole source awards to small business and set aside. So who could be eligible for sole source? Well, 8As, WOSBs, EDWOSBs, hub zones, service-disabled, veteran-owned small business, and small business. Same thing with set-aside. That's restricting competition only amongst those categories. And then there's other categories of types of preferences and set-asides, and that's through the Veterans First program, as well as a hub zone price preference. And then there's mentor-protege evaluation for certain governments. It really was through that evaluation preference. I believe was through, there was one with the Department of Defense at some point through their mentor-protege program. But moving on to the kinds of NAICS codes, because some of you are very familiar with NAICS codes and other people are not as familiar. So these are the EDWOSB NAICS codes as they exist now. Now, I would have had to put 15 screens together to show you all of them, but I wanted to give you an example of what they look like now, knowing full well some of the people who registered online for this for the webinar. Also, next, each NAICS code, so the Census Bureau sets the NAICS code for food service contractors at 722310, but then there will be a corresponding size that the SBA sets. And you could find that corresponding size on the SBA's website. They have a size calculator, and then they also have just a spreadsheet of all the all the individual NAICS codes and the size standards. So now this is an example of the WOSBs. Many of these on this category used to be EDWOSB when this program first launched off. But now, as you see, many of you who are in construction, women businesses, that you have WOSB categories, which means that you don't have to apply as an EDWOSB, and you don't have to worry about personal net worth or upload your personal net worth to the SBA's repository. Other WOSB categories, there's so many of them. There's computer categories, design services categories, geophysical surveying, testing laboratories, marketing, process logistics, environmental consulting. A lot of the consulting categories are now WOSB. Facility support services, security guards, janitorial services, remediation, physicians, medical laboratories, bed and breakfast, linen. They go on and on. So here's the rules on a restricted competition. This is from the WOSB contracting program. A contracting officer may restrict competition to WOSBs or EDWOSBs if the contracting officer has a reasonable basis that two or more, and I did EDWOSB for this one, EDWOSBs will submit an offer for the contract, and the contract award may be made at a fair and reasonable price. We call that the rule of two. Are there two or more WOSBs or EDWOSBs that could present an offer at a fair and reasonable price? If that's the case, the contractor can, in fact, restrict the competition to women-owned businesses and set the solicitation aside for women-owned businesses, okay? There is no dollar amount. There used to be, but now there's no dollar amount on how large it could be. It could be a $20 million set aside for women-owned businesses. Sole source is a little bit different. A contracting officer can still sole source award to a woman-owned business when the contracting officer determines that woman-owned business is responsible contractor with respect to the performance of the requirement. The contractor does not have a reasonable expectation that two or more EDWOSBs will submit offers, and the anticipated contract price, including options, will not exceed $6.5 million for manufacturing and must be under $4 million for any other type of services or construction. And the estimation of the contracting officer, the award can be made at a fair and reasonable price. So as of October 15th, that's when firms must be certified as WOSBs or EDWOSBs, either through third-party certifiers or through the SBA. It does not impact contracts that are already awarded under self-cert. So if you're performing a contract under self-certification award, that's fine. Okay, but any contracts as of October 15th that go onto the street for bidding or for offers, the woman must be WOSB or EDWOSB if the contract's set aside. And it allows bid proposals if firms are able to demonstrate that it has applied for certification before the date it submitted a bid, and it has not previously sought and denied certification. So there is one aspect of the EDWOSB program that a lot of contractors really don't think about or pay attention to, and that's the limitations of subcontracting. So the SBA has a position, and I agree with the SBA, that if they're going to set aside a contract for a woman-owned small business, that's who should be doing the work and not other businesses, unless they meet this limitations of subcontracting. Right. So what they did in this limitations of contracting was the language was different up until a few years ago, but this is the new language. So if you are awarded as a woman-owned, a veteran-owned, a HUBS-owned, or just a small business, a contract that's set aside for your category of business, meaning small business, in the case of a contract for services, no more than 50% of the amount paid by the government to the prime may be paid to firms at any tier that are not similarly situated. I think the old rule was a lot easier to understand, but the bottom line is that if you've got a contract for services and it's $100,000 in technology, you cannot pay out more to subcontractors than $50,000 out of that $100,000 to any other subcontractor, whether it's large or small, unless that other contractor is similarly situated. Similar situated means, in this situation, another WOSB or EDWOSB. So the same thing would apply for those veterans out there, that if you have a contract of $1 million, you could basically subcontract all of it to another SDVOSB. But if you don't, and you're using other subcontractors, this rule will come into place. So for the services industry, or in the case of products, it's a 50% limitation. For construction projects, they say that you can perform 15% of the work or more, but you cannot pay out more than 85% of the work paid by the government to you at any tier unless you're paying out to another WOSB, because that other WOSB is actually helping you to meet that limitations of subcontracting. So back to for instance, if by chance you have a $100,000 technology contract, and that's services, so it's a 50% limitation. If you know that you can self-perform 40%, but really the other 10% is not within your capacity, you can find another WOSB. She could perform that 10%, and you've now met the limitations of contracting by both of your firms. And that's why I highly encourage teaming and joint ventures, because it really helps you to go after those larger contracts when you feel like you don't have the capacity. And then specialty trade, which in construction, that means framing contractors and concrete contractors, or any specialty electrical contractors, theirs is a 25% performance, or you cannot pay more than 75% out to other firms that aren't similarly situated. So let's talk about eligibility reviews and what that's about. So what the SBA want to make sure is that they verify and monitor those that have been self-certified and obtain third-party certification. They might also investigate accuracy of any certification that went in through their own system or went in through a third-party certifier. They say that any SBA's position is that any woman found to be non-compliant must remove their designation in SAM, and the contracting officer shall not award them with a contract. So what status awards and protests? There's been many protests out there, not as many as veteran or small business or 8As, but there are growing enough of protests for women-owned small business set-asides, whereby let's say 3 businesses, women-owned businesses, submitted offers. One of them was awarded, and the other offerer, another woman-owned small business, may say that, wait a second, this woman-owned business that received the award actually is affiliated with other companies through lots of means, whether it's ostensible subcontractor or for the other areas of affiliation that the SBA utilizes. They could protest, okay? So they could protest size, or they could protest eligibility, meaning that you're contesting the fact that woman-owned business is legitimate and is in compliant with the eligibility rules. Contracting officers also do their own protests, and I've seen the SBA do their own internal protests. But if you do want to protest or you are protested, highly advise you to consult with your attorney before you file a protest, or if you know one has been filed against you. Now, some of the questions I have already on the screens, which I'll start now, because they were sent to me ahead of time, like a few days ago. So, and then I'm going to get to a few others that were sent to me today. So a question was, can a WOSB be faced with both a size protest and a status protest at the same time? And the answer is yes. An interested party, which means that a person submitted a bid or seeking to submit a bid for some other and can't bid for some other reason, can protest both size of an EDWOSB and the status, but they're 2 separate protests. One size protest and the other one a WOSB status protest. But once again, seek guidance. So what are the common mistakes that are made in EDWOSB eligibility as it relates to the personal net worth and exclusions? So the common mistakes made in the EDWOSB is including the 100% of the value of your asset. So for instance, if you are a company, you don't have to conclude the value of your company in that personal net worth. If people are not including loans to and from your company, and that you have to demonstrate that and disclose that on your personal net worth. They don't include their primary residence altogether, even though it will be taken out. You have to at least identify it and include it. People aren't including other real estate they own or owned by other LLCs, which they own, or by family members. If they own part of it, that has to be included in the personal net worth statement. Many people do not include other companies they own in the personal net worth statement, and you must. And then if you have a trust, you have to include the assets in your trust. I get questions about when can I do a joint venture with another large business? So can I make a WOSB joint venture with a large business? The answer is no, unless that large business is also an approved mentor of yours under the SBA's Mentor Protege program. Then the two of you can joint venture all you want, or consistent with the rules, actually. Can you joint venture with another SDVOSB or other small business? Yes, you can create a WOSB joint venture as long as you, as a WOSB, are 51% owner of that joint venture. Does a joint venture need to be in writing? Absolutely. Are there any SBA regulations governing the language of the joint venture? And yes, the SBA has very clear and strict rules on what the joint venture must contain as it relates to profits, it relates to who's managing the project, as it relates to who's managing the joint venture, and showing how you're going to meet the limitations of subcontracting and self-performance. So another question we got was, there's an upcoming Navy solicitation for technology to be WOSB set aside. If I bid the work, I can only handle 40% of the contract, can I subcontract work to another small business? Absolutely. To a large business, yes, or another woman-owned small business, yes, but you still have to meet that 40% limitation. You have to meet the 50% limitation. So you're only going to be able to meet it through another woman-owned small business. So let's talk about reciprocity, because this is what is really concerning to the women veterans out there, as well as those who have 8A. And the SBA's new rules do talk about this. They don't call it reciprocity, but they do talk about it. The rules basically say that if you are CVE verified and you want to go to the SBA's website when you're applying for WOSB certified, you upload that information on the CVE. But remember, veterans can be male or female, so you don't automatically, they just want to test to see if you're also a U.S. citizen. Veterans do not have to be U.S. citizens, so they have to check some additional information to be verified as a woman-owned business and get that type of streamlined certification. The same thing with 8A. They just want to verify that you are, in fact, a woman-owned and controlled business, because you could be a minority business, but they want, and maybe you and even your husband are both 50% owners as an 8A, but that doesn't mean that you're going to be a 51%. That doesn't mean you have eligibility to be a WOSB, because, because you still have to be tested under the WOSB rules. There are other questions I want to get to. Let's see, we have 5 minutes. Excuse me, I had them printed out. And here are some of the other questions. How many years do you have to be in business to apply for WOSB? No set amount of time. My certification lapsed and I want to renew my certification for WOSB. I believe that in that circumstance, you either go on right now and self-certify as a WOSB, but just know that you have to certify through their process. You can only certify through their process as of July 15th. You could move for certification. Will there be any oversight committee for the WOSB program concerning the legitimacy of certifications that are used in federal government contracts? Yes, there is. The SBA themselves are doing their own audits. There's always the Inspector General for the SBA, as well as Department of Justice, that will look into this, into any alleged misrepresentations as to WOSB. There's ways to do it. They call it whistleblower ways. You can contact the Department of Justice through their Inspector General. You can contact the SBA through their Inspector General, or just do it through a protest as well. Let's see. Are there any? Let's see. I'm sorry. Can contracting officers sole source to women? Yes. is there a dollar amount on similar to the 8A program? And the answer is yes. Let's see. I think that we covered all the other questions. I believe I covered in the presentation. We're 4 minutes out. Karen, do you see any other questions coming in, or do you have any questions?
I don't, and I don't. I would, to the question about my certification lapsed, I would really encourage people who are certified by whatever certifications they have, WeBank, you know, a local government or state government, write on your calendar, you know, 90 days before it's going to expire, so you remember to do it. Because once a certification lapses, every certifying entity has different processes, and at a certain point, it's simply too late and you have to start from scratch. So just do yourself a favor, you know, put it on your calendar every whatever, you know, April 10th forever, that this is when I have to remember to deal with my XYZ certification. Just like you would your kid's birthday.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Karen. It was a wealth of information. I want to thank all of you for attending. We've really enjoyed it. This will be taped. So, I mean, this is being taped, and so, or recorded, I should say. And it will be both on our website. It will be on the Federation of Women Contractors website. And forgive me, Beth, I know you're on the line, and I should give a big shout out to the Federation of Women Contractors, who I am the legal counsel for their board, and we have been a big champion of the elimination of self-certification. So all the Federation of Women Contractor attendees on here, I thank you, and we're all so pleased that this rule is finally in effect. You can contact me anytime through this contact information, or Karen anytime, and I want to thank you all. And I believe we're going to then close down the webinar. Thank you all so much again, and have a great, safe day.